Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show on this Friday, April 21st, 2023. Glad to have you guys here. Thank you for tuning in. Now, here's the thing, guys. The Fed always gets everything wrong. And, I said that they were going to get this wrong with trying to fight inflation. Just what I said, just leave it alone. Don't mess with it. And now they're messing with it again. What they're trying to do now is very clear. They're trying to invoke a recession. Because what they're thinking is they're thinking, hey, if the economy goes into the recession, there'll be less spending, less everything, and inflation will cool down rather quickly. There's a monster of a problem with this that they're generating. And what they're going to generate is what I'm going to call a dichotomy between two parts of the economy. And this is the reason why this thing's going to fail big, miserably, and going to lead back into inflation again. I'm going to get into this a little bit. First, we're taking a look at this article by Hedge, and it's talking about the Fed. And I'm going to read some of the highlights of it. The article is "Break the Chain: Why a painful recession is required to crush inflation expectations." And this is what the Fed's trying to do, invoke a recession. But here's the difference between a depression and a recession. They're both very similar. And a lot of people have heard the word depression, and they don't like to use the word depression ever since the Great Depression. But the real difference between a depression and a recession is only the magnitude of the event. And so we're used to getting a recession like every 10 years or so in this economy on a cycle. It's a cyclical thing. It follows the debt cycle, where people start buying and the economy's picking up, and then it reaches a certain point where deleverages to a certain degree, and we have a recession. And this is what they're expecting, but this is not what's going to happen. It says, we suddenly find that an important question for the forecasting of inflation was whether firms would continue with the same pricing strategy or would accept lower profit margins in the period ahead. Economists have yet to produce a model that accurately measures the cumulative impact of the sequence of rate increases seen thus far, let alone the ones that are fully captured the intricate internal dynamics of inflation. Okay, so here's basically what it's saying here is they don't have a model to understand how this cumulative impact of these interest rate hikes that they've pushed on us so quickly from the Fed, what the cumulative effect of impact's going to be pushed out over the next number of months. So what they've already done, there's a lagging effect of raising interest rates like they have so quickly, and they don't know. They don't have a model. It says economists have yet to produce a model that accurately measures the cumulative impact of this. They don't know. They're experimenting on the financial system. That's basically what they're doing. But what they're trying to do is invoke a recession, what they think will be just an average recession, and this will slow down the inflation for them. And they are terrified right now because they're pushed into a corner. I mean, what are they going to do if they continue to fight inflation? They're doing it at the expense of the economy. An economy is an intricate machine, but when it starts to die, it dies rather quickly, and it dies into something called deflation. And so they're diving into uncharted territory. It says this coincides with a growing popular interest in the terms excuseflation and greedflation, which suggests that companies are using external cost shocks as an excuse to price gouge customers and bring in fatter profit margins. Okay, so the highlight here says, on that note, yesterday's data showed a 22% year-over-year increase in U.S. continuing jobless claims due to rising layoffs and slower hiring. This morning, the United Kingdom's retail sales posted another month-over-month fall, with sales volumes down 1.6% to the relative levels of 2019. So what we're seeing here, we're seeing the front edges of a monetary contraction caused by these rate hikes that they've pushed on us so fast, and they're continuing with them. We've already saw a number of banks failing, starting with Silicon Valley Bank, and that's not over. But all the other bubbles out there in the economy are starting to roll over. So here's the thing. We're dealing with an amount of leverage right now in the system that's unheard of. It's never been this high. And so what they're trying to invoke, this recession that they're trying to invoke, my point is, it's not going to turn into a recession. It's going to turn into the depression. And it's going to do it very, very quickly. And this is this deflationary spike event. And that's why I use the word deflationary. Is because I do believe that suddenly the economy is going to snap. In other words, they're really going to break something big very, very soon now. They already broke something with the Silicon Valley Bank crisis, the banking crisis that they have. But they're going to break more. Probably the next shoe to fall is going to be the commercial real estate market. And then the regular real estate market's on shaky grounds right now. Those are two big things, really big, along with the banking system right now. And you know, when they get what they're looking for, this recession is suddenly going to snap and turn into a depression. And then we're going to see an awful lot of failures within the system that's going to cause them to turn around on this. But what they're going to generate, okay, so they generate this depression then. Let's move forward in time now to see what their mistake is. The mistake they're making is they want a recession, but they're going to get a depression. And let's see where the points of failure are going to be. The points of failure are going to be in the people themselves. And they're going to generate a problem of poverty within America, and a large group of people that right now are right at the point where they're not in poverty yet. They are still able to manage to fit things together, but just barely. There's what's called living from paycheck to paycheck. When this depression that they generate starts, and this is where the dichotomy is going to be, because they are going to have to support these people at some point in time. And if these people aren't working anymore and they can't support themselves, they're going to have to move into some radical new forms of social programs and stuff to support these people. But now think about this for a minute. That's still putting the onus on all of this on the tab of the government. So they're taking vast groups of people out there who right now are contributing to society. They're creating conditions of a recession that's going to take these people out of work. And then they're going to move over and start supporting these people with pay from the government, probably some sort of guaranteed income or something like that, social programs. But now what they've done is they've made the entire economy less productive because they've taken these people out of their productivity. They've moved them out of their productivity and having them suck on the tit of the government instead. In other words, money for nothing. And now do you really think that that's going to ultimately, in the long run, going to improve the situation with inflation and stuff within the currency and the purchasing power of the currency? If you're having to give millions of Americans that you've taken out of work, if you're having to support them with money you're creating off of a printing press. So now they're not doing anything productive, this large group of people that you've created by creating this right here, this recession/depression. You're going to have Hoovervilles again. And then the government's going to be supporting these people with probably a check from the new central bank digital currency. Do you think that's going to make the currency worth more? Because these people are not producing anything and they're consuming. The price of what they consume is going to go up because there's no there's no production in America anymore. See, this is where we're getting down to the real fundamental of the actual problem is America shipped all of their industry out other places. So now we're becoming less and less productive rather than more productive. At a time when we need to be more productive. You just cannot have free money to run to everybody, to feed everybody, without that money becoming worthless. And so they're creating a situation, ultimately in the end, that's going to lead to even higher inflation. But first, we're going to have to drag through this period where they've sucked all the liquidity out of the system, and they're going to run us into a depression. And so then the depression, because they cannot let it fall to the ground, is going to lead to actually an inflationary depression. There's no way out of this situation we're in. The Fed's backed into a corner. They've backed themselves into a corner. Basically, it's kind of like they've painted themselves into a corner now at this point. And now they're looking for these silly ways to get out of this thing by actually destroying the economy, and they're okay with that. But they think somehow it's magically going to stop at just a recession and not turn into a depression. And I'm here to tell you guys that that's exactly what's going to happen. This is going to turn into a depression overnight, because what's going to happen is something's going to break bigger than the banking break that we had, and it's going to do it very soon. Okay, we're going to get in there and take a look at the markets now. Now that I had my little rant about that. But there's no way out of this, and you guys got to prepare for it. And honest to God, I mean, it's going to be of a magnitude we haven't seen since the 1930s. And that's if we're lucky. Because if this is not handled properly, it could be the end of, like, the power grid could just go out in the whole thing. And believe me, that can happen if it's not handled properly. Take a look at Venezuela. They had big power grid outages and crime. Because what happens is in normal times, you have a certain criminal element out there. And typically criminals are not all that bright. They're generally trying to support some sort of a habit or something like that they have. Maybe it's a gambling habit or whatever, or maybe it's something more illicit. But generally they have a habit they're trying to support. So they turn to crime. But those are the people within society right now that are criminal element. But what happens is when families can't feed themselves and they get desperate enough, they can turn to a criminal element too. And these are not your typical criminals. These are people who have been upstanding members of society. But now what happens to them is they have to feed their family because they're starving to death, because they're in not a recession, but a depression, just like the 1930s. And they get desperate. And those people, they're not your standard, ordinary criminal element you have now. Those people are people who are really top-notch, using their heads and stuff. Very, and a lot more of them. And this is what happens in places like Venezuela. When Venezuela was undergoing that hyperinflation, you wouldn't even want to fly in on an airplane into the city and be walking around the city. You'd get mugged the first hour. That's how rough crime can get. It can get totally out of control, crime, to the point where the police, they just can't handle it, and they just back off and they just let it go. And that's what can happen. And people don't tell you. I mean, historical records, it's hard to find. They didn't talk too much about it in those days, and it's hard to find historical records about the 1930s in the United States during the Great Depression. But they had tremendous amounts of home invasions that occurred. Because people that ordinarily weren't criminals turned to crime in order to feed their family. If you got an adult male, and he's got 2 kids, a wife and 2 kids at home, and their lights went out because they couldn't pay the power bill. They've got an eviction notice on the door. There's no food in the fridge. He can't get a job, right? It's cold inside the house because the power's been turned off, right? They don't know where to go, don't know what to do. They get in a situation where they're like pushed up hard against the wall. And I mean, it's just, and you get thousands of people in that same situation. It's bad. And that's kind of like what it would be if it was in like in the 1930s, if we had a Great Depression style event here. But this could turn out an awful lot worse if it's not handled right. Like I say, if the financial system tends to freeze up and they can't get it unfrozen in time, well, things like your local power company might be bankrupt and they send all their employees home, and the next thing you know, your lights go out. And if that happens in more than one region, I mean, the government might not even be able to cover it all. And we could actually have grid down periods that last gosh knows how long, and you imagine how the crime would take off then. You imagine when the crime's gone, when the lights are out for more than 2 weeks, well, there's a criminal element out there bigger than you could imagine, especially in hard times, and they're going to start to take over that region, whatever region it is. And so we might be facing situations like this, rolling blackouts that last for weeks. This is what your government is doing to you because they've mismanaged the system. That's whose fault it all is. Because we could have still been on a gold standard right now, and our money would have been worth something off into the future. It would have had value, and there wouldn't have been this corruption in the system. Of course, then too, they couldn't get the printer going and print their buddies off a whole bunch of money then, could they? If we were on a gold standard. They can't enrich themselves so easily. And this is where the real problem lies, is within your government. It doesn't matter what country you're in on earth, is you have people in the positions of power who want to skim off the top. And they can only do that if they create a currency that they can create willy-nilly amounts of it. The Fugazi is the best way for them to, and so they don't care about you. What they care about is their bottom line, how rich they can become, how many Lamborghinis they can have, and how many, they don't care about you. That's why they create all these nuclear weapons. And they do it with your tax-paying dollars. And when they make a nuclear weapon, I call them boomerang weapons, because if you use them, they're going to come right back. Well, not the exact same ones, but the ones the other countries got. And so, I mean, they use your tax-paying money to create them a weapon that's going to blow you up with your own money. What can I say? I mean, this is what you deal with when you start to go down this road. This is Nixon really put us on this road in 1971 when he took us off the gold standard. Boy, that was a big one. And everybody just kind of like, oh, well, it's nothing. And Nixon put us off the gold. Nobody paid that much attention to it. They called it the Nixon shock. But he said, well, it's temporary. It's only going to be for a little while. We'll go back on the gold standard. They never did. Lies, 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 heaped on more lies. And now we're finally to this point right now where money is ready to become worthless. But what are they going to do? They're going to stimulate this massive, what they call recession, which is going to be a depression, destroy the economy to try to slow down the money so that the money will still be worth something. Are they stupid or what? Because they're gonna destroy everything. They're gonna destroy your lives when they bring on this thing on. And everybody, I guess, is okay with that. Okay with the Fed destroying your life. 28,163, 1915 for Ethereum, and 28,164 for Bitcoin. Bitcoin has been suffering. Gold and silver today are, well, gold is $19.82, $22. So gold and silver are doing a little bit better than Bitcoin right now. It's starting to break down a little bit. And Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 50 points at 33,836. We're looking at crude oil at 77.93. It's up 56 cents. Bonds and rates, and we're looking at rising yields today. U.S. 10 years up 2.1 basis points at 3.56. And the U.S. 30 years at 3.77. It's up 2.2 basis points. And the U.S. dollar index is at 101.87. They've made a monster of a mess. And there's actually no way out of this. And we're going to have a depression coming up very soon. And I'm going to tell you guys, nobody here, including myself, has lived through the Great Depression, but we got historical records and we got films and books about it, how bad it was, how hard it was on the people. But that was a deflationary depression. The front side of this, when it very first starts, probably in a few more months, is going to be deflationary in nature, like the Great Depression. Then, because they're going to have to try to work and do some sort of deals to try to fix it, then it's going to become inflationary again. But it's still going to be a depression, because they're not going to be able to stimulate the economy back up to the way it used to be with lots of jobs and things like that. So it's going to be an inflationary depression ultimately. And it might last quite a little while because it's going to take time for the currency to become worth less and less and less and less. It's just like it's been all along, except it's going to move faster. And you're seeing it move faster now. I mean, already you're seeing it move faster. I was looking at lawnmowers, you know. And it used to be, you could go and buy the standard lawnmower, the cheap model, like at some place like Home Depot or Walmart or someplace like that. It was $99. It had a 3.5 horsepower Briggs & Stratton engine on it and just a push mower. It was always $99, right? Well, went there and it was $389. It was on sale though. $289, I think it was. Regular price was like over $300. It was on almost $300, but it was like $289. And they thought that was cheap. It used to be the $99 mower. For years it was $99. Then they said, okay, we got a 2% inflation target. Well, you think we're fools? 2% would take 50 years for the price to double at 2% inflation target, if that's what they really had. So I can tell you right now, 10 years ago, I used to be able to buy that mower for $99. Now it's $289 on sale. Okay? So a 2% inflation rate would take 50 years to double the price. So the $99 mower in 50 years should have been $200. That would be a 2% inflation per year. Okay? 2 times 50 years, 100% inflation, which would be double the price. Okay? But it's not. It's more than doubled. It's almost 4 times the price in only the last 10 years. So that to tell you, there's nowhere near 2% inflation out there right now. It's much, much, much higher, and it's speeding up faster and faster because that $200, almost $300 mower now, 2 years from now, I could see that mower being like well over $1,000. Your wages aren't keeping up with that. And so what's the net result is we're getting poorer and poorer. We're being slowly cooked with inflation, and it's going to get a lot worse and worse. But now, because of what the Fed's doing, none of us are going to have any jobs anymore. So we're all going to be begging. No, they're not going to leave us begging on the street. They're going to use new social programs that they're going to have to enlist new social programs. But that's just going to make things worse. Make the inflation even faster. And the social programs won't keep up. It's just a faster and faster and faster thing that's going to end up taking us down the toilet in the end. And they ain't going to be able to stop this. You have to face that now. So how do you get out of this? You say, well, can I save money in the bank? No, you're not going to be able to save money in the bank. Forget that. Because inflation's going to eat your money to pieces. Well, you can do. There are things you can do. Real estate might not be the best among these things, but at least you have something that's real. You know, or you can go out. You can buy an old cars and fix them up, maybe, and use them as your silver. You could put copper away if you old copper pennies. I mean, everybody. I mean, even the guy that's got a substance abuse habits, walking on the sidewalk, sees pennies laying around. He could pick them up and check them and start saving the ones that are actually copper. I mean, it's everybody can do their part to try to manage to get through this thing, to have something that's going to be able to be of value rather than the dollar, because the dollar's on its way to zero. Think about it. I mean, maybe you work at a place where they tear motors apart. Maybe your boss will give you some of the old windings and you can take them home, melt them down into copper bars. You say, well, I can't save any money because everything costs so much, but maybe there's something you can save that's real and tangible. Metals are the best things, guys, and there's not just silver, there's not just gold. All metals, even aluminum. All metals. Metals has been money. Metals were the only money through history, or metals, not just the precious metals. Copper's considered to be a precious metal. Anyway, enough ranting at you guys about this stuff, because you guys got to deal with it, and it's coming in fast. Demise of the dollars here, and that guy I heard the other year, I can't remember who he was. Was it? It's a big top name in the financials. He said dollar's got 30 more years left before it becomes not the world reserve currency. But see, it was a big admission for him at the time, this is like a year ago, that the dollar has only got 30 years. He's seen the end of the dollar. But he was thinking 30 more years. Now I wonder if he would update that, if he would still say 30 more years. Now suddenly within the last year, maybe he'd say only 10 more years. And give it another year and he'll say, well, it's here now. It's gone. I mean, that's how quick it's going away. We'll catch you guys in the next show. Bye-bye.